Okay, so we are good to start with a pizza dough. So I am not going to let the yeast react like I did, because I just wanted to show that there are two different ways. I've explained why you need to do that with a lukewarm water, yeast and sugar separately to test if that particular yeast is good enough to go on to the flour, because we are using an instant dry yeast and that can go into the flour directly as well. But I'm just going to have the water alone microwave to get it lukewarm. Into this dough, except for the fat, that will be the last thing to go. Into this, I'm going to add the sugar, salt as well. Then the yeast also goes. Now you could do this adding everything together using the process of kneading it with a KitchenAid or your stand mixer's dough hook. The oil is lesser in the pizza dough because you don't want it to be like really very rich, because the pizza's flavor comes from all the topping and it is a linear dough. It's going to be very thin. And also we don't have milk in this dough, and that is why they are different. And I'm just showing two different variants. Then I'll be able to, I'm just going to pour this into this and check if the temperature is fine. You don't want to add like really hot water. On the count of 5, so it is lukewarm. I'm just going to add it inside. And put your fingers like how you do your roti dough as well. Still works. Oil will go at the end after I'm bringing the dough together and kneading it for a while, and then the fat goes in. For a richer bread dough, butter can also be one of the fat. So that same dough that we've made for the garlic bread and the bun, right, the Korean cream cheese bun, half of the fat, so half of oil, you can replace it with butter, or that entire oil can be butter as well. So it just will have very rich flavor. The butter's flavor will be there in the dough. So that is how it looks like in the beginning. Some extra flour. So if your counter is like the one that you're going to need, just make sure it is clean enough, or you can use like a sill pad like how I'm having. I'm just going to grab some extra flour. This is a quite soft dough. It's easier to knead with your hand, but then because of the stickiness, it's good that I'll be having some extra flour to just dust. The question is, can you make dough one day before baking? If so, how to preserve the dough? So you can just make the first step, which is this kneading and making sure the gluten is formed, and then you can cling wrap it. The first proving can be completely inside the fridge, so that will make it the slow proving, and obviously it is going to develop the gluten the next day, and then you can use it from the fridge, and then you can knock down the dough, and then you can start working on it. One night in the fridge works quite good. So I'm just going to start kneading. So now at this stage, you can see the inside. It is just all, you see the texture is like not quite smooth, right? On the outside as well, it's not quite smooth. Now kneading it is just going to make it soft, like how the stand mixer is done. So the step that I'm going to use now, obviously it is a sticky dough for the hand especially. Now if this whole thing was happening inside the stand mixer, then it is not going to be sticky in your hands. The mess will be lesser. So not too much of flour will be needed at that stage if this whole thing is going to be inside a stand mixer. So I'm just going to hold one side of the dough with me and stretch it using my right hand because I'm a right-hander. So depending on which is your strong hand, then you will change the direction. But then the step that you will follow is to stretch it away from you and then bring it back. So the extra flour will not hurt. Just make sure it is not sticky. So now this is definitely going to take more than 5 minutes like that. I'll still check for the window pane. I'll still keep kneading until the dough becomes shiny and smooth. And that is when the gluten is going to be formed. Now, the next question, how many days overnight? That is all that will work. Otherwise, it's just going to be over fermenting. So you just need to observe this and just maybe change the direction so you're able to see. So that is how it is going to be initially. Stretch it out. So how many of you have already made breads and worked with yeasted dough? Have you tried making like maybe donuts, or what are the things that you've already worked on with the bread dough? Because now this is going to take a while and that is live. So we just can't be like taking a break and then coming as well. So now we'll just maybe discuss about your bread baking experience of what you've done already and whatever has been successful, and if you've had any difficulties. We can show the sides. Now you can see how the dough slowly changes texture. It's just becoming a bit smoother. No one has made any breads, and that's why you thought you will just be part of this course and then start making your bread. Yes, Shilpa. So you will try after this, like maybe tomorrow's a Sunday, just try this out. You follow the exact same timing that we have done in the class. And this overnight proving is something that you can explore at a later point of time, because you want to just leave it out in a warm room to actually check how it is doubled, right? So that first proving is like quite magical. You'll just see how it is just rising up. So stretch it away from you and then roll it back. Hold one side of the dough with you and roll it back. And if it is sticky, just get some flour in your hands. Tanya made a few breads. Do we put less yeast if we are doing overnight proving in the fridge? Not necessary. You can just retain the yeast as it is, because the fridge itself is going to cut down on the proving naturally, because it is like a very cold place. Now, basically, if you're going to reduce the yeast in a recipe, the proving time is going to be more, even if you're going to work in the same room temperature. The same recipe, if you're going to reduce the yeast, then you need to be waiting for a little bit more time for it to double. But obviously, the slow proving, the later the time it takes to prove because of the addition of lesser yeast, will have a better flavor. Now, adding more yeast is going to speed up the fermentation, but the faster the fermentation is, the flavor is not going to be great for your bread. So it depends also. Now, if it is summer, the fermentation will be faster because of the temperature that you guys are in. And in that case, if you feel like your dough is doubling up faster, the first proving is faster, you can reduce the yeast at that stage, like maybe reduce it by a gram or so, and then allow it to ferment, which is the first proving time. You can allow the time to be a little bit more. So when the proving time is a little bit more, the fermentation is slower, and that will have a better flavor to your bread itself. Now, addition of more yeast will obviously have a faster fermentation and lesser flavor. So that is what you need to understand of what the yeast is doing. It just helps with the fermentation, releasing the carbon dioxide, right? Now, that fermentation, if it is slower, better the flavor. So that is one logic you can just keep in mind. More the yeast, faster the fermentation, lesser the flavor. Lesser yeast, slower fermentation, and better the flavor. Now, when can we know the proving is done? And in that case, so see, it is going to double in volume. That is the logic that in general is written for us to understand. And you will know that the outer surface is shiny and you're not having any rough surface formed on the top. That is when you know it is proved. Now, over proving, you can look at that itself and then say, the surface is not going to be shiny. It is going to have like bubbles formed on top. Now, overproving will happen because the release of a lot of carbon dioxide, because we have let it out for long, the yeast that is activated is going to keep releasing the carbon dioxide. And those are the air pockets that needs to be sealed inside the gluten in the dough that has been formed, right? Now, like I said, the gluten is like an elastic, and as the carbon dioxide releases inside the dough, it expands the gluten. And now, as much as the gluten's elasticity is retained, the carbon dioxide gets locked inside the dough for the texture of the bread to be like really well, which is these smaller pores that you see inside the bread. Now, if you're going to leave it out for long, whatever the elasticity that the gluten might have, the pressure of this carbon dioxide that is releasing inside the dough, it will break the strands of the gluten that is formed in the dough. And once the strands break, you don't have the cover or the seal for the carbon dioxide to be locked inside the dough. And the carbon dioxide escapes out of the dough. And that is why when it is proving, the dough is double. When it is overproved, then the dough doubles and the strands all break and then it falls down. And that is why an overproven dough rises and then falls down. Now, when you know that the outer surface is not shiny and smooth, and if you have that, you know, it is just risen and come down, you know it is overproved. Now, overproved dough will have an extra fermented flavor, like, you know, fermentation, you can imagine like your idli dosa batter, we allow it to ferment. For us to understand, like in a logical way of what fermentation is, curd is a way in which we ferment. Now, if we add in some more curd into a little bit of curd into the milk and allow the milk to become curd. Now, adding a little bit of curd and allowing the milk to set for a longer period of time will have a better flavor for the curd, right? Now, if you want the curd to form quickly, when we add more curd into the milk, it will set faster, but would the flavor of the curd be like really good? No. So it is a similar logic of adding more yeast and lesser yeast. So lesser yeast and more fermentation time, better flavor, and more yeast and faster fermentation is not a better flavor. You can have this with a comparison to the curd, adding of how much curd to the milk and allowing the time for the milk to set into curd. The slower the time, the better the flavor of the curd. It is the same logic of fermentation with the breads as well. Now, you're allowing the curd to be in the room temperature like for an entire day in summer. Morning it tastes better, but in the night, if it is in the room temperature, which is you're allowing more fermentation to happen to the curd, the sourness from the curd is like not very appetizing, right? So similarly, when an overcooked dough means it is over fermented, and that flavor is not going to be great. The sourness in the bread will not be appetizing, or it is not going to be tasty. So overcooked dough, maybe you can make it to taste and see how much of the sourness has affected the dough. But obviously, an overcooked dough, you cannot give it out to people, anybody else to eat who you know that's not going to judge, like a family or so. You don't want to waste it. Obviously, you can bake with it, but we can't go back to fixing the over fermented dough, like adding more flour, and those logic will not work. So whenever you want to think about proving, you need to keep in mind the logic of fermenting the dough. And whenever you want to understand how fermentation works in the dough, then you need to compare it with your curd, which is easier for you that way. Or you can also think about the idli dosa batter. If you're making it and then fermenting it yourself, then that logic will be effective for you to compare and think. But if you're buying the batter, then you may not even know if it has been fermented. That logic, then stick to the curd logics fermentation to compare it with how it works with a bread. So how long have I been kneading it? 10 minutes now, right? I think looking at the comments, I think it's 10 minutes. So let me just do a window pane test. It is breaking now, right? So this means that you're able to see. This means that the gluten formation is not much. So we continue to knead. There you can see the texture of the dough is changing. So slowly gluten is forming. So obviously in live, you know practically how much time it is going to take. So when kneading it like this is a step, you're waiting for the gluten to form. And for you to imagine what gluten is, think about an elastic that we are forming inside the dough. And now that elastic will be the strands that are in between the bread that is going to keep the carbon dioxide from the yeast locked inside, and those are the air pockets that will get retained in the bread, and that will give you the texture of the bread, which is all porous inside. So the pores are all the carbon dioxide that is locked in between the strands of the gluten. So now it is actually more than 10 minutes. So that is why keeping a timer and working. And if I was like focusing only on this, and then if I was like a little bit faster and then focused on stretching it, rolling it back, maybe in 10 minutes I might have got. Also because I was explaining things to you, maybe I'm doing it slower. Also then depending on what speed you are able to do. So all that will determine how long you have to need to have the gluten formed in the dough. Roll it back, stretch it away from you. As you're stretching, just notice there's the left hand holding one part of the dough. So stretching happens as much farther away from you. Now, this is a good workout, like bread bakers initially. This is very fascinating as well. If you just get hooked to bread and feel like how fascinating it is, then this is the best thing and a nice workout as well. A lot of people get fascinated by bread baking and they start trying out a lot of breads. So now that you know the logic and the kneading process by using a stand mixer and then using the hand as well, now try out different other recipes. Now basically for donut, cinnamon rolls and stuffs, there is extra sugar and there is butter in place of oil. Now these are savories, and because pizza is a linear dough, which means you don't want it to rise too much. And like I said, the flavor comes from the filling. There isn't much of fat in this. Sugar is also not very high. And in the dough for the bun, sugar is not high because that is again savory based, but fat is more because that is made a little richer, because bun is also going to be like an equal half and half, its presence is half and half together with the filling and the bread. But for pizza, it isn't like that. So too much fat is not necessary for a pizza dough. However, for like a cinnamon roll or for a donut, there will be extra sugar and there will be butter. I think it's mustard on oil. Pouring in the oil. Oil we could have added a stage earlier as well. I'm just going to incorporate the oil. Oil will get incorporated as you need. So the oil in the pizza dough recipe is lesser than the one that we have used for the bun. As you know, as you keep kneading, when you are just going to stretch it and pull it back, you know that the dough is not going to break. The stretchiness will be better. And so with a hand feel itself, you will know the gluten formation is happening or it's already formed. And that we will just know with a window pane test. Let me just do like, say maybe a minute more, and then we will just get to the window pane test. I think this looks good, but it is breaking a bit because I'm stretching more. Let me knead it a little bit more. So this much time it is going to take for you guys as well. You guys already have yeast. Nobody asked me what brand of the instant dry yeast that I have used. So you can buy your yeast from the baking supply store or even from Amazon. You look for instant dry yeast. The one that we are using is Glory Pan. So this is the brand that we are using. It's an instant dry yeast, right? So you could buy the same one, or you can buy whichever is available in your baking supply store, but ask for instant dry yeast. The stretchiness is getting better. The dough is getting softer. This is a nice workout. Like the stand mixer would have done this even at a faster time with not much of physical effort. So that's the difference. But obviously, it's like not a thing that you can't do just because you don't have a stand mixer. And that's why I thought I will just knead this completely in the live. So you see from the start to end with no magic in between, like the video just can't get cut, to have like another dough that is made already for you to show the gluten formation. Shall we test? This is better. No tears. That is because of my finger. So you can see the in between is like, let me stretch it up on this side. And this looks good. Okay. So now again, after the stage, you know what has to be done. You've seen that on the garlic bread or the bun dough, right? So I'm going to put it together. Just need to make the outside shiny, bring it into one ball. And you can see the surface is like quite smooth, shiny. It's quite soft, and that's also when you know that gluten is formed quite well. It's a super smooth dough. Okay. So we need to let it for proving, right? There's another bowl, and into that bowl, I'm going to oil it. All the sides. And then make sure the top, I just roll it and oil the top as well. And then keep the bottom side down. And like I said, this can be covered with a damp cloth, which is nothing but wetting a towel, squeezing out all the water, and then covering it up. You could also cling wrap it. Now this goes into a warm room to double up in size. That might take about 45 minutes to about an hour. Now we are on number 4 for making pizza sauce. Now the ingredients are here. We can just side pan and show the ingredients. So that's oil here. Okay, and then chopped garlic, finely chopped garlic, and that will go get sautéed, finely chopped onions. After the garlic, it'll go. There's fresh tomatoes, and then there is tomato puree. The tomato puree is a canned one. We'll just show the one that we are using. Tomato puree. You can replace that with fresh tomatoes as well. So what we have is this one. It's available in like the most of the ingredient supply stores, specifically just giving out for the restaurants and stuffs. You can use anything, even canned is fine. We just have this in the pack. So as per recipe, the quantity goes here. You can just increase the tomato and then decrease the tomato puree as well. But then overall, the weight of these both, you can just play around with how much of the sauce, the tomato puree. It's not the sauce, sorry, it is the tomato puree and then the fresh tomatoes. You can just play around, but then the overall quantity, the sum of these both is what you need to stick to. And then I have salt, sugar, the oregano, the chili flakes, and then we have basil. This is dry basil. The recipe calls for fresh, but we are using dry basil. Okay. And finally, we have the butter, and that is tomato ketchup sauce. This is the sauce one. And that will go at the end. All the spices will go at one stage, and in this order is what it is going to go. Now the fresh tomato, I'm just going to blanch it. Okay, so I'm going to, so that's a saucepan and the water is actually boiling in there. I'm going to drop this tomato in, and it is going to take about a minute and a half for the tomato to blanch. That is all it will take. And then I'm going to chop that. For the chunky texture of the sauce comes from the fresh tomatoes. You don't want it like too smooth as well. And that's a bowl of normal room temperature water. I'm just going to keep turning this. Let it boil for about a minute and a half. Shilpa's questions are here. Which cheese did I use on the stuffed garlic bread? It was mozzarella cheese because the stretchiness is actually nice. What is approx length? I just was checking how thin I was rolling. So for you to maybe get an idea, it should have been like 6 inches in diameter, roughly. Instead of egg wash, yes, I think I said that in that video. Milk wash is quite fine as well. The browning won't be much, so don't wait for the browning if you're going to compare it with what I will be doing. half milk and half egg you can mix up. The browning will be like neat. Full egg wash is like it's going to be like really dark brown. So you can see I was just using this knife to just score, and you can see the skin peeling out, and that's when you know the blanching is done. I'm just using the knife to cut through. When you know that skin is just coming off the body of the tomato, then it is done. So are you able to see that it is peeling out? Now you need to also de-seed it, which I will be showing now after the blanching is done. So let me just get it close if you're not able to see. The skin is peeled. I think you can see, right? The skin is just peeling out. Now it is hot. I'm just going to grab this and put it inside a bowl of normal room temperature water. Then I can show on the sides the peeling of the skin. Close. So a bit of scoring with a knife, and then you know that it is just opening up like that. Then the blanching is done. Now the chopping board. Now I want to just peel the skin out. Blanched tomatoes have the skin coming out quite easily. Doing that because we don't want the skin in the sauce. And we also don't want the seeds. I'm just going to get the seeds out. It's not like really very hot to handle. It is warm, obviously, but you know that there isn't much of wait time for you after the blanching and this step. Just going to discard this part as well. And then I'm going to make finer pieces. So smaller chunks is what you want. So not like the size that you would prefer to use on your curries, your regular cooking at home. I'm just going to make it smaller chunk. So blanched de-seeded tomatoes, finely chopped into smaller pieces, is now ready. Now get the stove back, and then I'm going to change it back to a skillet. Now, because I tried making the pizza with pizza sauce that is available, I thought maybe at least for home purpose, but then that was like having an extra tartness that comes from the vinegar, because it is the preservative that they've used, and there is some extra flavor that I felt like, it doesn't match up to what we could buy, because the access of having pizzas from outside, at least for kids and adults alike, is like quite more. It isn't like pizza is like something that is not easily accessible. In that case, now if you're going to give like a low quality pizza even for your kids at home, um, if they will compare that with any other better pizza, and to using like a jar of pizza sauce and then putting it on the bread, is like nothing close to what we can make our own. Now that I showed the order in which we are going to use the ingredients, right? So the first step will be to add the oil, and then garlic tomatoes, the blanched and de-seeded chopped um, tomatoes, right? The garlic, then the onion, then the chopped tomatoes, the tomato puree, and then all the spices together with salt and sugar. And we are going to simmer that for some time and allow the sauce to be like a bit thicker. And then finally we add the tomato sauce and then the butter. So after adding the butter and the tomato sauce, you're not going to cook for long. So that is why they are at the end. Now wait for the oil to heat up a bit, and let's do garlic on it. So you can see like, let me show in here. They're finely chopped. That is what you want to do. Because the flavor is there, but you actually cannot find the garlic. Golden brown, but not too brown. You can just see the flavor of the garlic getting fried up with oil in that color, and then the onions. Translucent first, and then a little bit of golden brown. So the raw flavor goes. And then the blanched, de-seeded, finely chopped tomatoes. Now the puree doesn't go in at this stage because you want the chunks to get cooked up properly first. And then we kind of mash it with a spatula itself. So that becomes a bit mushy. And then is when we will pour the tomato puree. Now, I think the weight of ripe red tomato, 100 grams is given. I have used one. Now, if the tomatoes that you're using, if they're smaller, just go on and then get two, just in case if they come down to like 150 grams, then make the tomato puree 100 grams. That way, just balance the tomato puree and the red tomatoes together, make it 250. Now, if you do not want to use the tomato puree, it doesn't matter. Weigh your tomato to 250 grams, okay? And then out of which, once you've blanch all the 250 grams of tomatoes, how many ever numbers that you get for 250 grams. And once you've blanched them, cut them, slit them, cut them, and de-seed all of them. Now, after you've de-seeded the 250 grams of the blanched tomatoes, half of the blanched tomatoes out of that entire quantity, puree that in a mixie, small jar mixie, a food processor, whichever you may call it. And that becomes your tomato puree in this recipe. So half of it becomes puree, completely processed in your mixie. The other half of the blanched and de-seeded tomato is what you will chop into smaller pieces and use in place of the tomato, this particular step in this recipe. Now, I'm going to just allow it to cook for some time. I'm going to just seal it up because it is a little tough. So allowing it to cook for some time. Who's made the the pizza sauce? This can also go with your pastas, your red pastas. Because a cooked version of the pizza sauce, the red one, is good to go for a red pasta also. Who's made your own earlier? I'm letting it covered because Tanya always make at home. So you tell me how different you make than what I'm showing you now. What do you do? Like, do you use all tomatoes, or how about the puree part, Tanya? So savories have actually changed the game of a patisserie. Now, I haven't basically done, this is my first ever savory baking class. Some part of it is there as part of the basic baking, the quiche and a simple pizza. But the Korean buns and the stuffed garlic bread are from our patisserie. And I've noticed like a significant difference in how the patisserie starts working, because you always have like the desserts and the cakes. I mean, they are good, but when you talk about savories as part of like a home baking, whenever there is a party or an event, obviously the savories just attract the client. And that way, even if there is no mood for them to actually eat a dessert, then you have the option open for them to try out the savory from you. Now, when they're ordering a savory, then you make them buy some desserts from you. Now, when there is a dessert, obviously then it will be appetizing for them to look at your savories menu. And that way it is like always win-win. So addition of savories in your home baking menu, I felt was like, something that will be interesting for the clients who come down to you even when they are going to order cakes now. You can make them look at your menu. So this learning part, just don't learn only for doing it for your kids at home. Practice it quite some time and then put it up in your menu. Once you're like completely confident about how this is going to turn out, obviously your test rats in your family, your friends, your first few trials, you just ensure that you're doing it like perfectly and consistently, and that is when you open the doors for the clients. You take bigger chunks and then cook it and puree it. Roast the tomatoes for a change in flavor. Yeah, you can oven roast the tomatoes. And then also the skin peels out. And that if you puree it also is like, you can call it roasted tomato pizza as well. And that goes well for pastas as well. So now I can see the tomato is like cooked. Okay, and now onto this, I'm going to add the tomato puree, which is from the pack that I showed. Like now, if you don't want to buy this, like I said, you can blanch and then puree it. The measurements can vary, but obviously a completely chunky tomatoes is not going to get you the pizza sauce. This part of the puree is needed, and that's when it spreads quite well on your pizza. So either use a canned one or blanch and puree it yourself. Now this I will simmer and then leave it to cook for 5 minutes. And before which I'm going to add all the spices. Now salt goes in. Sugar. The oregano. Red chili. Then we have the dried basil. Butter and the tomato ketchup, the sauce, is still pending to go in. With the spices, I'm going to allow this to cook and simmer. We are also bringing up by the inspiration of our online session, we are coming up with some new flavors of pizzas for a patisserie as well, which we are working on, and we are having our trials going on right now. Okay, so the spices are mixed up. Now you can check your seasoning if salt is enough, but then don't be, you don't want to add more because there is cheese that is going to come on top of the pizza, and that will have some salt. So overall, you don't want it to be like, really salty. So this much salt is quite fine. Unless you feel like the entire pizza was having lesser salt, and then you can go on and add in this. But just by tasting this, I suggest that you don't add any more salt. So it's going to be it is going to take about 2-3 minutes. We'll just wait for it to cook up well. And then finally, we'll just add the butter and the tomato ketchup. And like 30 seconds to a minute should be fine after we are adding the tomato sauce, we want to call that. You want the raw flavor of the tomato to go. There obviously, while baking, also the tomato will get cooked, but it is not like the timing is not too much for the pizza to get baked. So we want the sauce to get rid of its raw flavor. So we cook it up by simmering it and also have a thicker sauce because you don't want like quite a sauce with a lot of moisture to go on top of the bread dough. It's also non-stick, so it's not going to stick to the bottom. And however, if you're using like a regular kadai at home is also good enough, but just make sure you're not allowing it to stick to the bottom of the kadai. So you, even if you're closing it and allowing it to cook, just ensure you remove the lid and then stir it up and then keep it. But you look at the color, it's just changing, right? For empty bowl. I think this looks fine. You see the extra moisture is all gone. The colors just turned a little darker and looks nice. You show on the sides as well. Color, it's too dark. Okay. Okay, so the consistency like that, which will also cool down and get a little not as runny as this. It's not runny, it is like, it just falls off like that and it is not runny. So you will stop at that and the butter in. The butter melts with this heat. I removed off the fire because the consistency of the pizza sauce itself was just right. To add the butter and the sauce and then cook it for another 30 seconds would make it, go on to the next shade that will also add to the flavor. And tomato sauce, you don't have to cook at all. So the butter's just melted and got incorporated. Now, that is all you want. That will be the role of the butter and the tomato sauce. Now this, I'm just going to pour. So it's, that will be your yummy homemade red pizza sauce ready. We will allow it to cool down. And I think the next one, as per the agenda, is to make the topping. We are going to do paneer. Obviously, to just make it veg version. So we have paneer. You can obviously do your sausages, pepperonis, or chicken chunks, or tikka, or non-veg loaded or veg loaded, mushrooms, paneer, and capsicum. Anything that you see on like what can go on a pizza can be used for this step as well. We can just get the tray. We are ready? Okay. So what I have here, obviously the cheese that is to go on top of the pizza itself, seasoning, chili flakes, and the oregano again, that will go on top of the pizza. I have nothing to cook with that. Chopped bell peppers. Now the size of this is like quite big enough to go on pizza. And again, corn, frozen one, but then boiled, which means it is cooked. And then onions that are also big enough to go on pizza. Now, this step is just to toast the paneer. Now, what I have here with paneer is marinated with spices. This you can do with any spice. It can just be chili powder or pepper, salt, alone is enough. Or sometimes like you can make it with the oregano or the other Italian spices as well. Now I'll have the saucepan and a bit of oil is just to have the paneer tossed with the oil. You're just cooking it a bit. Don't want to do bit of raw and adding the marinated paneer directly on top of the pizza will also get it cooked in the oven, but then roasting it will have a better flavor. Now the rest of the ones will be used only when we have the pizza dough brewed, and then when you've rolled it, and that is when we will need the rest of whatever I showed. Now here we will just have the paneer. I'm just going to put. So this has been marinating from yesterday, but you can just do it for an hour or two, should be quite fine. Now, if you like the raw paneer to go without anything at all, if you really like that, technically there is nothing wrong, but obviously it is going to be like too bland. If you feel like you want to add like ginger garlic paste into this marinade, that is also allowed. So this one is like as per your taste of how you want to do. If it is going to be chicken, obviously marinate the chicken and then it needs to be cooked as well. If it is going to be mushroom, then yeah, you can saute the mushroom as well. Just want it to be like roasted with a little bit of coating on the outside. All the spices and the raw flavor from the spice is just removed. You want a bit of golden brown shade, and that is when you know the raw flavor of the paneer, of the spices that we have added, especially if there is chili powder in it. So the marinade will have salt and pepper, and that is as per taste. And obviously the choice of whatever spice that you want to add is according to you. You can just also do salt and pepper alone is also quite fine. And anything for the spiciness is also up to you. Maybe it's just chili flakes and then some oregano is also fine. Or the Kashmiri red chili powder with some ginger garlic paste and stuff. It's also up to you. And I think this much is fine now. I'm going to switch it off. I need a bowl to transfer this. I'll allow it to cool down. If it doesn't cool down, it's fine now. If you have your pizza dough ready, you can just go ahead and then start topping it up. Now the pizza sauce is ready and all the toppings are ready. The paneer is also cooked. Now I'll go check out which of the doughs done. Either the pizza first proving, that is the stage it is in, right? Or the stuffed garlic breads and the bun. If that is done, then I'll check whichever it is, then I will get back on that. Right now, let me finish with transferring. Just don't want a lot of oil. So now this is all we have and then ready. So let me see whichever is ready and then I'll get back with that. So we will stuffed garlic cheese bread is still proving. Like I said, there is quite a bit of AC in here, right? So it's going to take some time. So, but we are ready for the pizza. But you can see this is a little overproofed. Now you can actually see the difference between the dough of the stuffed garlic bread that I showed, how shiny the top was. But then here you can see the texture. You can show the color, make it a little dark. I mean, it's like too bleachy. Yeah. So this is the stage where you know it is overproofed, but you can feel the smell. If it is too sour, then that will have an effect. But whatever smell that you have in here will be there in the final product as well. But if this is bearable and it is not too much, then we are good to go. Like it is just not gone down too much, like it is not too fermented. Now this is good to go, knocking down, releasing the carbon dioxide that is locked in. And then I'm just going to take it in. With this, I'll be able to make 2 pizzas. I'm just cutting this into 2. So keeping the top smooth. I'm just going to roll this quite thin. Now, because of the elasticity, it is going to get back in shape. Now, after a point, you can just use your hands and then stretch it. the shape could be better. So first take the help of a rolling pin. So I'm keeping the center like quite thin if you're able to check the thickness of how I want the base. Now edge also I don't want it like too thick because this one is going to rise. For the pizza, I'm not going to allow a second proving because you don't want it to be like a bun, right? So after the topping is all added, it goes into the oven directly. So obviously the temperature will be anything above 200. You can try for a 200-degree for about 7-8 minutes, and it also depends on how many pizzas at a time you're adding. Now it can go up to 230 for 6 minutes, but it's not going to be like really a longer time baking for a pizza. You want to quickly bake and then get, and that is why all the topping is all cooked already. Just make sure it's not stretching back. And so you will do that, ensure you have like a nice, good shape, thin in the middle. Okay, so now on top of this, here's the pizza sauce. So half of it, I will do it on this. So let me just divide it between the both. Onto one, let me add the topping. Onto one, let me just do the cheese. So that will be like a margherita pizza. So now I'm going to spread the sauce. I think I have to dock it. Now, because this is going to rise up, no? This step is before the addition of the sauce. So I'm just going to go inside where I've placed the sauce. You don't want to do that on the edge. If you don't dock, then the bread is going to bubble up because of the steam during baking. With a fork, we're just poking and creating holes. And that way, the bread, the flat bread will come out baked flat itself. You know, after docking is when you will add the pizza sauce and spread it, leaving some dough area without the sauce. So that is for holding it and then eating, obviously. And then you haven't docked that part, so it will raise up on that edge. So you can see the chunks from the blanched tomatoes. That gives like a nice texture while eating as well. It's not like super smooth and soft. A bit of texture while eating is like always nice. Spread it out evenly. Okay. And then we'll have the toppings. You can just throw them out on top or just arrange it like how I'm doing. It's like up to you. Just going to do some onions. You can avoid if you don't like corn together with the paneer. It's all up to you. And then, so that one is going to have only the cheese. Now this is also going to be loaded with cheese. Now how much cheese is actually up to you. For this one half, you can do like 100 grams. More or less is again as per your preference. So this is like loaded on the higher side. So you can just adjust accordingly. So onto this one, only the cheese goes. Now you can bake it at this stage after the addition of cheese, and then once it's baked and it comes out, then you can allow the spices to go on. It depends on who is eating. If they like oregano, then they can sprinkle that, or you can just avoid that. But then if you know that you're going to send out with a certain flavor, then adding the oregano and the chili flakes at this stage also works. So you are controlling how much of the oregano you want people tasting your pizza should have. So this is just cheese without topping. And then spice it up. This is optional. You could do, or you can just skip that. That is chili flakes. We could add according to our taste even after it comes out of baking. Now the oven is already preheating. While one is baking, the other dough can rest. No, if you have a smaller oven, then cut down on the recipe and then just make half of this. It needs to go into the oven, like otherwise it's just going to, keep fermenting or proving. Now that is half egg and half milk. Yeah. Okay. So that is half egg and half milk. Like I said, you can use only milk wash also. So using egg, use half and half because that gives a better color. So whichever is the exposed part of the dough, that's where I'm just brushing it. So we are preheated at 230. So like I said, you can just see between 200 to 230. And the timing, we'll have to just check if the sides are brown and the cheese is melted on the top. We are good to take it out. And because you don't want the cheese to burn. Now we'll just do on a 230 for 6 minutes first, and then check if the sides are brown and the cheese is melted on top. We will just take it out and then show. So 6 minutes in whatever stage we are, I'll just show it to you. So we have the pizza come out of the oven because the bake time is quite less, right? So just want to show top and side. You can just swap and show. Yes. It's like quite soft. The browning of the bread is not much, but the cheese started to brown up. So that much is enough. So it took in 230 about 5 minutes. Now you could also do at 200 and wait at 5 minutes, 6 minutes, and then 7 minutes to see the edge to turn golden brown and the cheese is melted and not turning brown. And that is when you will know the pizza is done and you can just take it out. I'm going to allow this to cool, and then finally we can just bring all the finished products before I could just slice and show. Now that the cheese will be like really melted now, let me just transfer this. I'm also ready to make the cream cheese filling for the Korean cream cheese bread.